we are going to talk tonight in the Saturday Spotlight about dealing with some of the stressors that we have surrounding COVID-19. And we have a great guest with us today. This is Dr. Stephen Walker, who's a licensed psychologist. Dr. Walker, thank you so much for chatting with us.
No problem, Rod. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. One of the things that a lot of people are dealing with is stress surrounding what's going on with the coronavirus, not necessarily the physical part of it, but the mental health part of it, like managing all of this change. Like, what are some of the ways that people can try to manage what they're dealing with right now and see?
Sure, and that's a great question because I've been calling it, there's this planetary paranoia that we're all under. And one of the best ways to deal with it is to acknowledge how you're feeling in the moment and make that okay to yourself, and then find someone to talk to about that. People in isolation need to find ways to vent these negative emotions that they're feeling. So obviously, my bias as a psychologist is to talk things out. So if you're sitting alone with a whole bunch of negative emotions, that's just going to feed upon itself. And then when you're looking at the media is confirming all the worst case scenarios. So the best thing to do at this point is for people to accept what's happening around them in the world and to find ways to talk that out, either with a close friend, somebody like me, and really embrace the idea that there's nothing wrong with being scared, there's nothing wrong with being depressed, and there's nothing wrong with any negative emotion I'm feeling.
There's so many layers because we're talking about managing the stress surrounding the pandemic itself, and then a lot of people dealing with stress of losing their jobs. I mean,
Oh, man.
it's very difficult to deal with that.
It is difficult to deal with it because, we tend to live in a culture that prides itself on individualism. I don't need nobody. I don't need any help. But now here we are in a situation where there are people who never thought they would need help, all of a sudden needing help. So that makes somebody question their own self-identity. That makes them start wondering, like, well, wait a second, if I need help, that means I'm weak. And specific to men generally do not like to admit that they're weak. Men generally do not like to admit that I need help, that I'm scared. Mm-hmm. So here we have this external pressure of this virus. Then you've lost your job or you've severely been cut back. What do people generally fall back on? Their coping mechanisms, which in our culture a lot of times is drinking. A lot of times is alcohol. Well, I just said drinking, but a lot of times it's anger. And then that is a lethal combination because now you've got everyone living on top of each other. And with the prevalence of guns in Florida, things can go pretty bad pretty quickly. So what I recommend, again, is people need to use this time to be aware of their negative emotions and work on them. To say to your wife, your brother, your friend, hey man, I'm scared. I feel weak. I feel like what is going on around me, and talk that out in a way that's going to help them manage it and take it out of the idea that I'm the only one struggling with this.
And know that it's okay to say, I don't know what's going on. A lot
Exactly.
of us don't know what's going on. And last question, one of the things that we talked about before we started the interview was pessimism versus optimism, and how you look at everything that's swirling around you and try to still stay positive. That seems like a daunting task.
Right, exactly. And when I say pessimism and optimism, so let's focus real quick on optimism. I'm not talking about the social media idea of mental health, which is, oh, everything's great, let it go, everything's wonderful. That's not what I'm talking about. By optimism, I'm talking about what's called post-traumatic growth. Everyone knows about post-traumatic stress disorder, but not enough people know about post-traumatic growth. So optimism in a situation that we're going through right now is reinforcing to yourself that I'm going to come out of this situation a better person. I'm going to learn more about myself. As you know, I went through a month of severe physical illness that has completely altered my perception, not only of my place in my relationship, how I took for granted my physical health, how I didn't cultivate relationships I wanted to cultivate. So I went through a traumatic event, a near-death experience, which I'm now using in a growth-minded way, excuse me about that, so that I can come out of it a better person. So by optimism, I mean reinforcing to yourself, I'm going to grow from this. I'm going to become a better person from this.
Yeah. It seems hard, but you got to tell yourself that, and you got to talk to people when you can, right?
You do. And when you hit the nail on the head real quick, telling yourself, people need to come to terms with the fact that we all talk to ourselves, and self-talk is a valuable tool here. What Dr. Walker is reinforcing to himself will express itself in the outer world.
Dr. Walker, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and hopefully someone hears something that'll trigger them to make their lives better. So I appreciate you taking a few minutes with us.
And I appreciate you, Rod, helping to normalize mental health and destigmatizing the process. So thanks to you.
Absolutely.